Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webcast titled Triumph Services, Increasing Independence by Providing Effective Employment Services to People with Autism Spectrum Disorders, or ASD. I'm your host, Ann Williams. I'm based at SEDL in Austin, Texas, and work on the Vocational Rehabilitation Service Models for Individuals with ASD project. This project is funded by the National Institute on Disability and Rehabilitation Research, or NIDR. Every year, this project identifies effective practices that help people with ASD find and maintain competitive employment. Triumph Services is one of the 3 programs that were identified in 2012. Triumph Services' holistic model of assisting people on the spectrum has led the program in having a 64% success rate of placements for their clients with ASD in competitive work settings. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenters, Brooke and Leigh Belcher. As the Executive Director of Triumph Services Incorporated, Brooke brings a true passion for supporting individuals with disabilities to have the same opportunities as their peers. She has been working in the field of developmental disabilities with a focus on autism spectrum disorders for 16 years. On August 1, 2007, Brooke and another colleague founded Triumph Services with 2 main goals in mind. First, to assist individuals in their efforts to live independently, and secondly, to educate the public on the gifts and strengths of people who have developmental disabilities. Triumph has grown rapidly since its opening, currently supporting more than 200 individuals in developing and achieving their goals for independence. Leigh Belcher is the Director of Clinical Services and is a licensed therapist who has been involved in the mental health field for the last 15 years. Through her educational and professional experience, Leigh brings a unique approach to therapy that has proven to be extremely successful for individuals who have developmental disabilities. It was through her experience at Children's Behavioral Health Systems and Glenwood Incorporated that Leigh began her cognitive behavioral approach that she currently practices with adults who have developmental disabilities, specifically those with autism spectrum disorders. Brooke, are you ready to begin?
I am, thanks. Thank you, Ann. This is Brooke. Leigh and I are very excited to share information with you and our audience today about Triumph Services. As you mentioned in our introduction, Triumph was founded in August of 2007 with really 2 main goals. We saw a need in the Birmingham, Alabama community for supports for adults with mild developmental disabilities and mainly autism spectrum disorders to live independently in their communities. And also, we really wanted to focus on decreasing the negative stereotypes that surround people with autism spectrum disorders and other developmental disabilities and help individuals, as they gained independence, really change the community's way of viewing folks with ASD. So, when we started in 2007, we were providing support for about 15 young adults who were seeking to live independently in their community. Now, after a little more than 5 years, we've worked with more than 200 individuals in their efforts to gain independence. And this growth does not surprise us. As we know, the prevalence of autism spectrum disorder is growing at an epidemic rate. But in addition to that, individuals are getting great early intervention services and incredible inclusion programs through their school systems. So the expectations are changing as the students are exiting the school system and becoming young adults. They really want the same opportunities as their typical peers. And so it is just crucial that we're developing models such as the one we've developed at Triumph to serve folks with ASD and to meet these changing expectations. In 2007, the Autism Society of America published a call to action about this very thing. In this call to action, the Autism Society stated that between 2014 and 2016, they're predicting about 1.5 million students to be aging with ASD, to be aging out of the school system and in need of support. Well, back in 2007, the prevalence for ASD was 1 in 150, and now with the prevalence of 1 in 88, that 1.5 million is probably much higher, and the Autism Society is calling this a tsunami of young adults in need of support. So, you know, that Triumph was founded to really serve an underserved group, but an underserved group that is growing rapidly.
When we began Triumph, we really wanted to pride ourselves on doing so with a unique approach. We have a saying around here, and all the participants that are part of Triumph really know the saying, but it's our staff philosophy and core, that the individual that we are serving with ASD drives the bus, and we are simply the tour guides. And our job through our unique approach is to kind of help them and guide them and make suggestions on different paths that they may want to try or consider, or things that they may not want to do, but it's really partnering with them towards that goal. You know, what we have learned with working with people with ASD is that it's very difficult to generalize something that they have learned. So we've really put into practice from the very beginning the concept that you learn how to live independently, living in your own home, and you learn how to work on your own job, and you learn how to be social in social situations. And it's this core philosophy that has really scoped our whole approach. It's very difficult if you're trying to learn a job task to do so in a conference room of a mental health facility and then take that skill to your job in the community and be able to perform it there. So one of our main goals is to teach each of those skills necessary for employment, our independent living, our being social, actually in the middle of the situation that's going on, and it has been very helpful for us. So I feel like that we have certainly been around different philosophies and different approaches, which was really a one-size-fits-all model. It was that the individual with ASD needed to fit the treatment model that the facility was providing, when in fact we would like to do the opposite. We would like to take our core philosophy and our approach and be able to make that unique for each individual we serve by meeting them where they are and figuring out how we can do that.
Thank you, Leigh. This is Brooke. So this next slide is a painting entitled Celebrating Individuality. And Leigh and I have the opportunity to present on a fairly regular basis, and we always like to incorporate this painting in our presentations. It's really come to embody who we are and what we do at Triumph. So I want to explain this painting to you. A few years ago, I invited a friend of mine, a local artist, her name is Liz Langren, to come to our monthly women's support group. And Liz really doesn't have any experience with ASD, but she is a phenomenal person and was excited about the opportunity to meet these 5 young women and help them realize their gifts and be able to share their gifts with other people. And she wanted to do that by actually painting a picture in front of the women so they could see her gift and hopefully explore their own gifts. And so Liz's plan was to come to the women's group and have each of the 5 women put an idea for a painting in a hat, and then Liz was going to draw one idea out and paint that idea for the women. Well, once Liz got to know the 5 remarkable women, she knew that she couldn't just stick with one idea. So let me describe this painting in case some folks can't see it. One woman's idea was for Liz to paint an old Ford pickup truck, which is really the main topic in the painting. It's an old Ford pickup truck. And then another woman wanted an angel in the piece, and so there's an angel driving the Ford pickup truck. Another woman wanted an alligator, so there's an alligator kind of hanging out the back of the pickup truck. Another woman wanted a fish, which there's a fish in a fishbowl in the passenger seat. And another woman, the 5th woman, wanted a cat, and there's a cat hovering over the fishbowl. So Liz entitled this piece Celebrating Individuality, and we've just come to love it. It's hanging in our lobby, and just really, for us, that's what it's all about here, is that we, for each person that comes into our office, comes through our doors, we're really celebrating who that person is and their unique gifts and strengths and skills that they can offer.
This is Leigh. I want to talk to you a little bit about Triumph's program design. Really, our core philosophy is this: meet people where they are and wrap our arms around them through a holistic approach. We have 4 main services here at Triumph, and each of them are really interdependent on each other and the success that we have had thus far. We have life coaching, which is live, employment, which is work, social, which is play, and then therapy that kind of holds the glue, is the glue that kind of holds it all together. And we're going to talk about each of these services specifically in just a moment, but I wanted to speak kind of to the concept of this holistic approach. You know, you've often heard if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. Each person truly presents differently. Of course, there's some similar characteristics and some things that may or may not meet the diagnostic criteria, but each person brings to us a completely different personality and a different way of viewing things, and that's what we want to target. And we've realized that this holistic approach is able to do that because it centers around the person themselves. Wherever they are and what they may need, we're able to kind of wrap our arms around them. Each person does not receive each service. Each person does not get life coaching or employment or play or therapy, but we work together as a support team once a week to talk about each of the individuals that we're serving and really different approaches. And we're going to talk about that specifically when we talk about the program. You know, I think the kind of takeaway, the most important thing when we talk about this holistic approach is that our services are not defined by our program. They are defined by the individual and how our program can help support that individual. And I think that that is really the most important thing to look at. So first, out of that holistic approach, we're going to talk about life coaching and kind of how that impacts employment. There's really 5 major ways that we have seen that life coaching can really increase individual success in employment. The picture, if you're not able to see it on the slide, is of an individual that we serve and have helped her secure employment with her life coach, being funny and goofing off. And I think sometimes that's really important. It's having that person that you can talk to about employment issues and other things without feeling like you're being judged or being criticized, but to just have a good time and talk things through. One of the 5 areas that we've really seen life coaching impact employment is hygiene. Unfortunately, oftentimes individuals with ASD come to us for employment services and they're really struggling with their hygiene. We've really found out that most of this is due to sensory-related issues, whether it's that we have several individuals who have difficulty washing their hair because they don't like the way the shampoo feels. They also have some individuals have difficulty brushing their teeth, and all of this oftentimes will keep them from getting a job interview, or if they get the job interview, not being able to put their best foot forward and getting the job once the interview has been secure. So we really work with the hygiene as individuals and kind of help them understand the importance. I think oftentimes when people come to us as young adults, people have either made fun of them about their hygiene or they have ignored it and not explained to them the importance of it. And although the sensory issues are extremely significant and real for a lot of the individuals we serve, if we can explain to them why it would benefit them to work on specific things about their hygiene, how that might help them increase their job chances or to get a better job or to be more accepted at their place of employment, it's amazing the motivation that kind of comes from that, and those hygiene issues are worked on through life coaching. The second area is budgeting. I think that oftentimes most of us are motivated by our job, but we're also motivated by the paycheck that we get for a job. And for some of the individuals that we are serving, we help them secure their employment for the first time ever in their life. So budgeting that paycheck and helping them get a checking account and know how to save money and making suggestions has been very helpful, because then they are very motivated by that paycheck and want to continue to do a good job at work, just like all of us do. The third area is one that's kind of interesting and one that you might not think of, but we work a lot in life coaching to help people in employment with meal planning. Oftentimes, the individuals that we serve that have ASD will forget to eat because they get caught up in something that they're doing, or they'll make maybe not the best food choices, and then they get to work and have blood sugar problems or difficulty concentrating or forgot their money to get a snack. So really planning through that with them, a life coach will sit down and kind of help them do that and help them set their own rules of what's good to eat before work and what's not, has been very helpful as far as job performance. The fourth area is time management. I think that oftentimes the individuals we serve have either not worked before or it has been a long time since they have been employed. So figuring out how to manage their time between getting things done in their home and also working and being at work on time is a really balancing act. So the life coaches really help them by sitting down with them and just encouraging them to come up with some time management strategies. Oftentimes we use iPads or phones, assisted technology, but also charts and graphs and different things to remind people of when it's time to start getting ready to work, when it's time to leave for work, just helping them with that. Also, what I have learned as a therapist with the whole concept of time management is people feel like they do not have enough time to get things done that were on their list. That's very anxiety-provoking. So helping them figure out how to use their downtime effectively has been very helpful. And then the last is medication, helping individuals kind of doing what they need to do to chart out and set reminders to take their medication and also to refill their medication has been really important. So those are 5 areas that we have found that are addressed in life coaching that's really increased our employment outcomes and success.
Thank you, Leigh. This is Brooke. The next area we want to talk about on our holistic model is our play program, our social support. And the slide that is up now is a slide of 7 young women who met each other through working with Triumph and planned sort of a ladies' night out together. And we love to see pictures like this and hear stories like this. We've really found that when working with folks with ASD, it's critical to focus on social skills, especially if you want to have the person to have success in the workplace. So we have developed 2 ways to address social skills with an individual depending on their needs. One part of our social program is our group socials each week, and this is really just a very casual, fun way for folks to get out of their apartment or family home and do something with their friends. It's that we do something each week together, and it's on a different night each week so that we can accommodate people's varying schedules, and it's something different each week. Really, we want folks to be experiencing new restaurants or other places in the community that perhaps they would not have gone to before, and to get comfortable in those places so that they'll go back again. And then we also want folks to develop friendships and to meet other people with the hopes that they will plan to do something with that new friend on their own. And then our third goal in that weekly group social is that, folks will learn healthy social skills. So our staff that goes, and all of our support team, our job coaches, our life coaches, our therapists, our administrative personnel, we all go to the weekly social groups. And it's been really a neat part of everyone's job description to do that and to get to know individuals in a social setting. So the staff that go to the weekly social groups really encourage good social skills. They help people with the small talk that we found to be very challenging with folks with ASD, and really help people find common interests with one another. So that's been really neat to see. And then the other part of our social program is relatively new. We started this about a year and a half ago. It's called Individualized Social Support, and it has been really neat to see folks grow in this program and as part of our social program. Individualized social support is a service that we provide where one of our coaches, whether it's a life coach or a job coach or a therapist, really gets to know a person. And then as a support team, we think about and identify someone else who might potentially be a friend for that person based on common interests. And so at that point, we then, with the individual's permission, reach out to each person and say, hey, you guys both like baseball. How about the three of us, so the coach and the two individuals, go to a baseball game? Or, hey, you really like jazz music. How about the three of us go see this jazz band? And so, again, what we're trying to have happen here is for folks to be out in the community, changing those stereotypes I mentioned earlier, so making a really positive impact on folks in the community, developing a relationship, a new friend, developing healthy social skills, and ideally that Triumph will back out and that the person will then, have a new friend to do things with. And how this has impacted employment, it's just several ways. When you help a person develop good social skills and build relationships, that's going to help build a person's confidence and self-esteem, which will lead to greater success, both in getting a job, interviewing and making a good first impression, and in keeping a job. And it will also help a person get along with their coworkers and their supervisors and begin to understand the social nuances in a work setting. So we have found that both our group socials and our individualized social support has had a tremendous positive impact in our employment program.
The next program that we have is therapy, and this affects employment in so many positive ways. I think that individuals with ASD it has often been thought that individuals on the autism spectrum would not benefit from traditional therapy. And we have absolutely found the opposite to be true, that our cognitive behavioral approach to serving individuals in therapy that have ASD has been so positive. You're much more likely to suffer from depression or anxiety if you're on the spectrum, and that often comes up in every area of someone's life, but it really comes up in employment. I think that what we have learned is that individuals on the spectrum really have a struggle with subscribing to the theory of pull yourself up from your bootstraps, learn from your mistakes. If it didn't work the first time, then it's probably not going to work the next time. That's very, very difficult for individuals on the spectrum because of that difficulty to generalize that we talked about earlier in our holistic approach and kind of our unique model. So I think that what we have learned that small successes build bigger successes that build larger successes that end up being so life-changing for the individuals that we serve. So addressing specific issues in therapy has really increased their ability to feel success. So once they do get a job, they have a much increased confidence in how they're approaching those job tasks and job skills and the social interactions on the job. So I think that's been very helpful for them. I think one of the ways that we see therapy manifest itself the most as far as success with employment is helping people get ready to take the next step. Many people, individuals who come to us that are referred through VR have had numerous failed work experiences. Some people 10 or 15, and when you trace back and you kind of look at the antecedent to the failures or the difficulties at work, it always seems to come from a similar issue with each person. For example, we have a man that we work with who's in his 50s, and his name is Ted. And Ted had several different failed work experiences, all of which were due to sexually inappropriate behavior at work. And Ted has been diagnosed with Asperger's very late in life, so it's been difficult for him to kind of understand the diagnosis and what all that means. So when he came to us, he was quite distraught and really didn't even know where to begin to look. Let me make sure y'all know that Ted is not his real name. I just made that up. Brooke just asked me to tell you that. So Ted is so not his real name. And so Ted was very discouraged about what to do next as far as employment. And before we even really started the employment search, we introduced therapy, and Ted started coming on a weekly basis to address those sexual issues that consistently occurred, the sexually inappropriateness that cost him his job. And one job he had had for 15 years and had been written up several times for sexual inappropriate stuff in the workplace, and then was fired. And other jobs he would keep 3 months or 6 months. And so he just had this defeated sense of self about how he didn't understand the sexual impulses, how it relates to his Asperger's, how it relates to his impulses, and then how any of that relates to his job search. So really getting in there and digging in and help him figuring out how, and kind of how to gain some control over that and the purpose, all while understanding more about his ASD diagnosis and how that impacted his employment in the past, and how we can help him set him up for success for employment in the future. And that's just one example. It is amazing to me, and he has now been employed somewhere for a year with 0 instances, and is so extremely proud of himself that he wants to even look for another job or increase his employment when at times he had really decided to give up on the concept of working. So we're so proud for him and the work that he's done to really work through that. But all of that worked hand in hand with therapy and employment. And I think the same is true when you look at hygiene-related issues and understanding where those are coming from. Not just that, oh, someone needs to take a shower or they don't smell well. It has been much more about figuring out the sensory issues and how to deal with that anxiety. Mm-hmm. And therapy has really walked hand in hand to go through all of that. I think it's really easy when someone walks into your office with ASD to go ahead and make all these assumptions about why employment hasn't been successful in the past. And what we've learned is slow it down. And Brooke's going to talk to you about kind of our get-to-know-you approach before we look for a job. And the purpose of that is that we cannot make assumptions. Everyone that comes in has a unique set of strengths and weaknesses, and therapy has really helped us be able to play to those strengths and to work through those weaknesses.
And this is Brooke. I'm going to piggyback on that for just a minute. We had our support team. We have our support team meeting every Tuesday morning for about 3 hours, where we all gather together, as I said before, mentors, life coaches, job coaches, therapists, administrative personnel, and really, brainstorm ideas, discuss concerns, discuss praises, positive feedback, and just really work as a team. And I just was thinking this morning during support team, this really, to me, speaks to the importance of therapy. There's a gentleman that we've been working with who started a job a few months ago and has done a tremendous job there. His work performance has been great. His attitude has been great. The folks, he happens to work at Embassy Suites, so the folks love him there. And all of a sudden, the feedback we got last week is that this gentleman was having a difficult time getting along with his coworkers and his supervisor. Well, this is a new issue for this gentleman, and so it's been really exciting to have licensed therapists on our support team that will be able to meet with him and try to identify what's going on. And instead of traditional job coaching, that's really not, I don't think, the answer here, because the gentleman, this is a new issue for him, and so kind of really figuring out what's causing the change in attitude at work, and having him work with a therapist is going to be really, really beneficial in the next couple of weeks. I'm excited to see how that impacts his job performance.
This is Leigh. What we have seen oftentimes is that individuals who are having difficulty at work are feeling out of control in other areas of their life based on certain life situations or circumstances. And it's just difficult for them to know who to talk to about that and or how to talk to someone about that. So providing them the opportunity has been just what individuals we serve have said has been life-changing for them. So we're super excited about how therapy really impacts employment.
Okay, so the next slide, this is Brooke, is employment, and I get so excited to talk about employment. That's my background and my passion, and I love everything that we do at Triumph, but I think we've agreed as a team that employment, or lack thereof, seems to have the biggest impact on a person's independence and their self-esteem and confidence from anything that we do. And I think that's true probably with the general population.
Absolutely.
Whether or not they're employed or not employed is going to, impact all areas of their lives. So I'm excited to talk about specifically our employment programs. Well, as we mentioned before with our holistic model, that it's not a one-size-fits-all model, that the services we provide are based on the individual's need. They're not defined by the program, they're defined by the individual. The same is true with our employment program. It is not a one-size-fits-all model. It looks very different for each person, especially with ASD that we work with. And what we know especially about working with adults with ASD with employment is that it's very important to spend a good bit of time initially getting to know the individual. That's been critical for a person to have success in employment, is that our employment specialists and really our entire support team spends time getting to know the person at home, in social situations, in a therapy setting if needed, and then also in work settings. So our support team is spending about 6 weeks really trying to understand the individual and that person's unique skill set and that person's strengths and interests. And oftentimes people come to us with a very unclear picture of their career path. Some folks have very limited job experience. Other folks, as Leigh mentioned before, have had some pretty negative job experience. So in either situation, the career path is unclear at best. And so we really partner with the person in that first 6 to 8 weeks and get to know that person and help that make sure the individual understands his or her strengths and skills. And that's going to build confidence as we begin to job develop. So after that initial 6 to 8 week period where we're observing the person in a work setting, we're getting to know the person at home, we are asking the person all kinds of questions, and their family or support system at home, all kinds of questions from, what time of day do you prefer, to do you work better with males or females? Is there a temperature that you prefer? I mean, we ask just a million questions to really try to understand each person. After that initial 6 to 8 week period, we begin job developing. And I feel like the way we job develop is truly unique. We do not focus on who is hiring or job openings in our community. That might be what one would think when you're looking for a job, but that's really not our approach. Our approach, again, goes back to the individual, where we've spent 6 to 8 weeks getting to know the person and understanding their strengths. We then, with the individual and whoever has gotten to know that person, whether it's a life coach, employment specialist, therapist, whomever, brainstorm potential jobs and businesses that would be a good match for this individual. So we come up with a list of as many as possible, really. It's ideally at least 10 places to go approach for a partnership with employment. Right now we're partnering with about 88 businesses in the Birmingham community, and that ranges from anything from banking to law offices to child care to, of course, grocery stores and retail environments, restaurants, nonprofit world, churches, animal clinics, really you name it. I mean, just based on the person's interest and skill set, we're going to go seek a new employer to look at this as an opportunity to hire this incredible employee. And so, the majority of the jobs we find are certainly not from the want ads. They're from understanding the individual and then going out and looking at our businesses that have great reputations and approaching these businesses with the idea that this is an opportunity, that we want to introduce you to this remarkable person that has these amazing strengths and who could really add to your workforce. And I think that approach has been very successful, not only in helping a person find a job, but also in changing the company's workforce and the dynamics at work and the way they're viewing the employment opportunity. The last thing we want is for an employer to hire a person out of pity. We want the employer and the person's coworkers to understand that this is, a great opportunity for the company and for the other coworkers to, have the chance to work next to this person that has these great skills. So we don't stop there. After we find that match, we pull the support team together to help the individual get ready to start a job. And that actually is also part of the interviewing process and everything that goes along with getting hired. We've got our life coaches on board helping the person, get ready for an interview or get ready for their first day of work, set their alarms, know what to wear, eat, as Leigh said, make sure they're eating or packing their lunch or what have you. We've got our mentors prepared to role play some social skills that might be expected in a work setting. We've got our therapists that, oh my goodness, really, really help during the interview stage and when a person is hired to address the anxiety that any of us would feel with starting a new job, but especially a person with ASD. And then we have our employment specialists that actually go to the interviews with the individuals and help, to make sure that person is representing themselves in the most positive light. And then once the person is hired, the job coach is working side by side by the person as long as it takes for that individual to be comfortable and for the employer to be comfortable with the person. And job coaching does not look the same for any two individuals, but kind of across the board with ASD, we've seen that it's just not the job task that the job coaches are focusing on. In fact, some of these jobs, especially around computers, our job coaches don't really know how to coach on the tasks. So the individual with ASD usually is a whiz at the job task, but the job coaches are focusing more on the non-task related expectations of the job, such as when to take a break, who to go to if you have a problem, who is your direct supervisor, what is each coworker's role, and how do you interact with your coworkers. How we have yet to find a job that doesn't require some level of customer service at some point. And so how do you work with your customers? Who are your customers? And so that's really the focus of the job coaches and the entire support team. And then after the person is comfortable at work and their employer is comfortable, we never go away. And that's really, really important. We fade on the work site, and our job coaches come off the work site, but then we're checking on the individual a couple of times a month to make sure that everything's going well. We call that long-term support. I'm not sure if every program is consistent with the name, but we found that long-term support is key for a person to be successful at work and to retain employment.
Hey, Brooke, this is Ann.
Yes.
We have a question about that came in when people were registering. How do you pay for that service, for the long-term support service that you offer?
That's a great question, Ann. We don't.
That was Leigh. Long-term support is not a funded service through our VR system. However, it is part of our contract to provide supported employment. So we have spent a good bit of time in the last 18 months tracking every kind of minute of long-term support that we're providing for each individual to come up with an average cost of that service. And, as we are developing this effective program for employment with folks with ASD, trying to convince, and we're going to talk about systematic challenges in a moment, but trying to convince our VR system how important long-term support is, and that this is how much it costs per month, but this is our job retention rate, and how much cheaper it would be to spend the $47 per person per month on long-term support than to have to reopen a person's case each year.
Right.
So, to answer your question, that is a service that is not funded, but that we feel like is incredibly important, and we just do it. We cut, we eat those costs.
That's right. Thank you for sharing your experience with that. I'm sure a lot of other vendors are have to figure out how to offer those long-term supports too. So it's good to hear all different ways of doing it.
Well, and let me also say that our long-term support, based on the individual and employer's preference. And so, some individuals and some employers don't prefer to have a face-to-face contact with long-term support twice a month. They prefer an email or a phone call, and we really want to respect their preference. We never want to become, a burden to the individual or the employer. And so whenever, that's part of the surveying we do. It's how would you like us to contact you? Would you like a phone call? Would you like a visit? Would you like an email? And, to respect the individual's privacy, how would you like to be supported in your work environment? And so that's something that we also really individualize, and, when we can, that also cuts back on the amount of time that we're having to spend. If there's an employer that prefers, less contact or an email or whatnot, then we want to do that, for the interest of the individual, and, that it's certainly a more cost-effective way to provide long-term support.
And Ann, this is Leigh. That's a very fluid thing also. It changes. For example, today in support team, when we were talking about an individual that's on our long-term support list who has been employed at the same place for about 18 to, I guess, about 20 months now. When we checked in with them last month, they said the employer asked that we just contact them on a quarterly basis because the individual is doing very well. They can support him with the small bit of accommodations that he does need, and that they would let us know. So it's really trying to work through that with each individual.
I see. So individualized supports, just like the rest of the services, are really important in long-term supporting them too.
Absolutely. Right. And in long-term support, sometimes it's not just the individual that we are starting and supporting. It's their boss or their manager that might change. One manager might want twice a month contact, and the next manager of the same employee might prefer it once a quarter. So it's getting to know the employers too.
And let me also mention this, something that we've learned in the last year or so. Another reason we want to respect those employers' wishes if they want less frequent contact is, imagine if someone were checking on you twice a month at work. Goodness, it's a balance that, what if you just happen to be having not such a great day? And that's when your job coach called in on your boss and said, how's Ann doing? Well, right. It's not your best day, Ann. So
right, it does seem...
We want to respect if an employer, we don't want to create problems in a work setting. We want to, it's okay for someone to have not such a great day. And we don't want to be calling or contacting the employer so frequently that we're bringing problems to mind that aren't really problems.
Right, things that would fade away.
Yes, we've learned that delicate balance, I guess, over the last year, wouldn't you say, Leigh?
Yeah, and I think it's really zoned into us the last 6 months. Yeah. It's just not fair. We want to make sure we're providing all the support we need, but equally supportive as other employees without a disability.
Right.
Right. Thank you.
Sure. You're welcome. So to continue our discussion on, I've given you guys an overview of our employment program and kind of what makes it unique as far as the amount of time we spend with a person, the way we approach job development, and then the amount of support we provide, when the person is hired and continuously. so now I'd like to talk a little bit about how that approach leads to some really successful outcomes. And I want to start, we measure our effectiveness with internal and external outcomes. And our internal outcomes for our employment program are pretty simple. It's our job retention rate and our employment rate. That's just some numbers that we want to be studying on a regular basis to look and see how we're doing internally. And right now, our job retention rate is about 91%, and we're very proud of that rate for folks with ASD. And I really believe that the reason the job retention rate is so high is threefold. One, the amount of time we spend with the person when they begin working with us, so we're really getting to know the individual so that we can have a good job match. And then also the long-term support that we are providing just forever and ever. And then the third main reason that the folks are able to maintain their job is our support team, our life coaches coming in as needed, our therapists coming in as needed, our employment specialists, just working together to make sure that, because, you know, as Leigh said a few minutes ago, a person may, you know, someone may be doing great one day and not the next, and just having a whole team of professionals that can help meet a person's ever-evolving needs, I think is the reason our job retention rate is so high. Our employment rate right now for folks with ASD is 64%. Overall, our employment rate with individuals with developmental disabilities is 82%. And we also feel like that's really positive compared to the national average. And again, I think it's that approach that we use as far as not focusing on just who's hiring, but really focusing on the individual and their skill set and plugging that person in and presenting the person in the most positive light possible. And then also having a room full of people and the different contacts that each of our coaches and mentors and staff have, working together with different, brainstorming with different ideas, and oh, you know, have we thought about this or that for an individual, has also been key to helping folks find a job. So those are our internal outcomes. And our external outcomes, really we do a lot of surveying for our various stakeholders. And when it comes to employment, the main stakeholders that we're surveying are the individual, the employer, and the individual's family, to make sure that folks are satisfied with their employment situation and their services with Triumph. And when it comes to the individual and the employer, part of our long-term support is that every quarter we do what's called an employee feedback meeting, where we sit down with the individual and the employer, unless the employer has asked us not to do this. We like to sit down on a quarterly basis and really help the individual get some feedback on how they're doing at work, and also let the employer know if there's anything that they need on the job as far as support to make the job better for them. So it's a chance to really facilitate communication with the employer and the individual with ASD. And what we've seen, you know, all of us appreciate feedback, and all of us, I think, you know, would like to hear when we're not doing something right at work, or when we are doing something right at work. But I think that what we have found is if a person has ASD, that need for feedback is even greater. And so we want to provide a real structured way for the individual to receive that feedback with one of their coaches present for support, and to help, you know, the individual process the information, understand what's going on, understand any changes that may need to be made, and also communicate their needs to the employer. So it's a really neat way that we can kind of survey the individual and the employer's satisfaction with the program. And then our families, we also survey on a regular basis, and also in a formal way once a year. And 100% of our families agree to the fact that they feel like the individual with ASD has gained independence through employment with working with Triumph, and we're really proud of that. And then I wanted to share some outcomes that we saw from some employers over the past year. Some employers shared with us that the main outcomes that they have experienced with working with Triumph is that by hiring a person with ASD, it has helped their business as far as help their business be more successful, which we really love to see that. It's facilitated communication with the employee, which I spoke about a moment ago, and it's also changed the employer's perception of people with ASD. So these all go back to kind of our mission and vision with founding Triumph, to really decrease those negative stereotypes and help people become valuable members of their society.
This is Leigh. I want to talk to you. I wish it was all gumdrops and lollipops around here and that everything was extremely positive. But unfortunately, there are some specific challenges that happen and go along with serving individuals who have ASD. There's some individual challenges. I think that one of the main challenges that we have pretty much learned the hard way is making sure that we do not make assumptions about what the challenges might be. That it's very important to get to know the person individually and to listen to what they are saying specifically and to ask questions and to not make assumptions. However, if there was one common theme that is an individual challenge for the participants that we work with, and that is lack of motivation. And it's not because they are lazy. It's not because they would prefer to play video games, although I know that that's a stereotype that a lot of people may subscribe to. In reality, it's the lack of motivation is fear of failure. It feels like time and time again, whether it be through the school setting or failed employment or social interactions or feeling like they don't really know where they fit in, that they see their life as one failure after another, even though sometimes very small, it can impact them in a huge way. So what we have learned, the greatest catalyst to increase that motivation is to set individuals up for success. It's still up to them whether or not that success occurs, but making it easier to see in small increments has been very helpful for this challenge. I think it's really important. You know, we have a saying around here, and we say it all the time: success builds success, success builds success. And really helping the individuals that we serve be able to understand that and how that kind of impacts their life is one way to kind of tackle the challenge of lack of motivation. I think one of the other challenges that we've seen for the individuals that we serve is that they do not, upon meeting them, you do not immediately know that they have a disability. Oftentimes it takes a 10 or 15-minute conversation, or sometimes longer than that, to understand kind of how the autism might manifest itself. So for employers and individuals in the community, oftentimes they don't give them that 10 or 15 minutes to kind of figure out what's going on. They make a judgment call, and they kind of put their arms up and cause them to kind of walk away, which is another kind of idea of how failure manifests itself. So really fighting against that, I think, is something that is important. And, you know, I think it all goes back to the support team of getting to know each person. Each person has unique challenges, and understanding how to meet those and figure out how to help them is extremely important. I think that what we've learned, though, at the end of the day, is if people are successful in their home, they're more successful at work. If people are more successful at work, they're more successful in the community, which is true for each one of us. So seeing how that unique, holistic approach kind of each one plays off of each other for overall the totality of their success is so important. And we're reminded of that each week in support team, but also in the chit-chat as we're in each other's offices and brainstorming about employment ideas, thinking about how the community can work together for these individuals has been really important. Some of the family of origin challenges that we see, more times than not, it's really a dichotomy of the way that a family approaches us. They either have too high of expectations for their family member who has ASD, or they have too low of expectations. And so I would love it if we could put those in a blender and whip up a middle ground. But I think helping the family members understand that there are things that are going to be more of a challenge and are not setting them up for success. But there's also 1,000 things that the individual, their family member might be able to do, and helping us understand that. I think also what we have learned is that oftentimes a family comes in that's super involved, and they like to be the voice for their family member that we would be serving with ASD. They like to tell us what they like and what they dislike, or what they would like to do, and we really want to back out of that and make sure that the person that we're serving that has ASD's voice is being heard. And so that's difficult sometimes to get parents or family members to kind of back off a little bit, so that we're able to kind of really figure out, because just because your mother wants you to work in a plant nursery doesn't mean that you want to work in a plant nursery. And trying to provide them an opportunity or a job try to see what that's like, and then listening to that feedback. These are just some of the family of origin type challenges that we've had. And then systematic challenges, I think, it's that we talked about earlier. It's the idea of a VR kind of believes that there's a one-size-fits-all approach to supported employment, and we have learned that that does not work with the individuals on with ASD. In fact, oftentimes it can be quite disastrous. And so trying to convince the VR system that this concept of life coaching and therapy and social support really all factors into why our job retention rate is so high, and why individuals are once they get jobs, are keeping them. So trying to work against that normal model is definitely one area that we need to work on. And I think also kind of as we talked about the long-term support, I think that's a huge reason that the people that we are serving are experience this level of success. But when there's no funding for it, I mean, we're going to keep doing it, but as you keep growing and growing and growing, that cost continues to increase. So thinking about how that might be able to change systematically, I think is really important. Brooke, do you have anything to add? Okay. I have the privilege next of introducing y'all to Allison. Allison is one of my favorite people in the entire world for many different reasons. We started working with Allison about 4.5 years ago, and she presented to us at the time. She has PDD, and she presented to us at the time with a significant amount of anxiety and frustration in everyday living. She had tried junior college on several different occasions and had been employed at different places, and neither of those experiences had been very successful for her. So I'll never forget the first day I met her. She told me that she did not believe life would be any different than it was that day, so she needed to figure out how to live to be happy where she was. And so really trying to get her out of that rut and increase her motivation, as we talked about earlier, and seeing things differently was really our first challenge. We started working with her in June of one year, and by August she began working at a Montessori school here in town with 2-year-olds. And actually, I think she would be really mad if I didn't say they were like 16 to 26-month-olds or something. She tells me every time I see her, and I don't get it correct. But she's not only working with this age group, but she's helping them learn how to potty train, which I think would have to be a daily challenge. In August of this year, August the 1st, she had worked there 4 years. And she loves her job. I know that there are days that she probably does not, which is true for all of us, but being able to work through that. And it is amazing to see her frustration level drop. When I think about how Allison presented that first day, it is very hard for me to believe that she is the same person. And she really contributes that to her working environment, and feeling like she's contributing and having something to do every day, and lowering that boredom level, which has lowered her frustration level. Allison loves to read, and she loves to do art, so she's been able to incorporate an art lesson 3 times a week with her 2-year-olds. I'm going to round up. And also she gets to read each day to them, so it's been very, very rewarding for her. I think also I would hate to not talk about the impact that Allison working at the Montessori school has made on her employer. They are incredible community partners for us, and we really help them, and they help us do different things, both as non-for-profits. But Allison has changed their lives for the better, and we never have an interchange with the principal where she is not so quick to make sure that we remember that and know that. And I think that's what it's all about. Allison making changes in the children's lives, and coworkers, and they're supporting hers, making huge changes in their lives, and us getting to watch it has been such a privilege. but I think it was really attacking that individual challenge of motivation and getting her able to be willing to put herself out there and building small successes, and she's just doing incredible. The next person I'd like to introduce you to is Blake. Blake's home life is one that is quite frustrating for him. His mom is bedridden, and Blake is not able to drive, so oftentimes he's stuck at home in the home environment, and was, prior to working with Triumph, sometimes for a couple of weeks at a time without being able to get outside of the community. Unfortunately, he does not live in what his mother would call a good section of town, and so oftentimes she would not allow him to just get out and roam the streets. So he was really kind of stuck in their apartment. When we started working with him, probably one of the first things that I was able to do and had the privilege of sitting in on was an IEP meeting from his high school, where they explained to me that Blake would never be able to work and that I needed to get that out of my head. And not only was he not going to have a paid job, but he wasn't going to get the hours necessary to get his occupational diploma. And I just really would love to kiss those ladies, because what that gave us is the motivation to make sure that Blake was going to work and that he was going to get his diploma, because that's what he wanted. And to watch his face as they underestimated him in front of him gave him that motivation too. So Blake has been working at a local cafeteria. I believe it was a year in April? No. It'll be 2 years in April that he started working there. He started working about 12 to 15 hours a week. He's now working 25 to 30. And he went from washing dishes, and now he is what he calls the chef assistant. So he prepares the salads and the vegetables and all that stuff for cooking, and does some of the pastry cooking and stuff, which Blake's desire is to be a chef. So this is so exciting for him. I think more than anything, not only has work provided some financial income that Blake needed, but more importantly, really boosted his confidence and given him something to do to get out of the house. Plus, it showed that not only can he have employment, but he can have employment that gets raises and increased hours, but it has made him a part of a community that he would have never been a part of had it not been for his job. So he works at in kind of like an older strip mall that has several different shops in it, and he has made friends with all the local shop owners, and they give him birthday cards, and he gives them birthday cards, and they take him places and help him get a haircut, and this whole community that he has made based on the place where he is employed, it's just been amazing. So I think that the two things that I would love for you to see about Allison and Blake is that Allison was really lacking that motivation, and we had to think of some really creative ways to help her get motivated. And we were able to do that, and she's so successful with what she's doing. And then the second thing would be for Blake, I think he was classically underestimated. He was told that he couldn't do things, and Blake really believed that but wasn't okay with it. So helping him first through therapy to re-estimate his potential, and then help us kind of figure out how to make that happen for him. And he has made it happen for himself and owns it every day, and it's made a huge challenge, a huge difference in his life. So that is Blake and Allison.
So we'd like to close by discussing, this is Brooke, some future goals that we have here as an organization. And you know, we know that the needs are vast, that the needs of individuals with ASD and employment are certainly not unique to Birmingham, Alabama. And so, you know, for this model to be replicated, we've got to affect systematic change. We've got the burden to prove that, you know, it's this holistic approach that leads to success in employment for folks with ASD, and that's what needs to be funded. That it's not the, you know, the traditional supported employment, either workshop approach or typical job coaching on job task approach, that it's the you know, everything else that goes along with having a job that leads to success in employment, and that, you know, it's our responsibility to prove that through our internal and external outcomes. And then also, you know, our 5-year plan is to expand our services both locally on a state level and nationally. Again, we know that the needs are not unique to Alabama, and we would love to take this model and help support folks across the country. So first, we're trying to sort of raise the awareness of the needs of adults with ASD, and also of Triumph's model, and we appreciate this opportunity to help raise that awareness. And then lastly, we just want to continue to have a positive effect on the community, and not, we don't limit ourselves to helping folks with ASD become members of society. We want folks with ASD to be valuable members of society. And so we really work as a team to make that happen and to focus on a person's strengths and help other people in the community see those strengths. So that concludes our presentation. Our last slide is just a way to contact either me or Leigh, and we have our email address and phone number. I'm at bstevens@triumphservices.org, and Leigh is at lbelcher@triumphservices.org. Our phone number is 205-581-1000, and our website is www.triumphservices.org.
Thank you very much, Brooke and Leigh, for your presentation today and for sharing more about how Triumph Services does the work and is able to have such a high competitive employment rate for the clients that seek employment services to you. We had a lot of questions that came in during registration, and I'm sure more people will have questions. And all the participants are welcome to email me at ann.williams, WILLIAMS, at SEDL, which is SEDL.org, and I'll combine all the questions and have Leigh and Brooke answer them and then send them out to all of you. So thank you again, Brooke and Leigh. It's really been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you, Ann.
And I also wanted to thank all of you who joined the webcast today and encourage you to fill out the brief evaluation form. It's at the bottom of the webpage where you signed on to this event, and I'll email you the link as well. You'll also need to fill out this evaluation to receive your 1 hour of CRCC CEU credit. And finally, I would like to thank NIDR that provided funding for this webcast. And once again, on behalf of our presenters and myself and the rest of the VR Autism staff here at SEDL, thank you and have a good day.